In the heart of 17th century southern Africa, the kingdom of Mutapa was a land of tradition, power, and gold. But its throne was about to become a prize in a dangerous game. A game orchestrated not by a foreign army, but by a cunning blend of faith, politics, and greed. Our story begins with a king, Capararidze, sitting on a throne built on suspicion. He watched the Portuguese missionaries and traders moving freely through his lands, and he grew wary. After all, the Portuguese had once helped his father conquer these very lands. What was to stop them from conquering it for themselves? To make matters worse, they had stopped paying the kuna, the traditional toll for the right to trade. Enough was enough. Capararidze declared the empata, a royal decree that gave his people the right to plunder foreigners to compensate for the lost tolls. It was a bold assertion of sovereignty, and in the eyes of the Portuguese, it was an act of war. But the Portuguese would not fight this war with a conventional army. They had a weapon far more precise, a rival to the throne. A Mozambique-born Dominican priest, Father Luis do Espírito Santo, saw his chance. He gathered a force, marched into the heart of the kingdom, and after a short campaign, he deposed Capararidze. In his place, he enthroned Mavura, the uncle of the king and, crucially, a pupil of the Dominicans. This was not a restoration. It was an installation. After 8 months of instruction, Mavura, his wives, and his noblemen were baptized. But his coronation came with strings attached, chains, you might say. To become the Mwene Mutapa, Mavura had to acknowledge the King of Portugal as his overlord. The terms were severe, a heavy tribute of gold to each new Portuguese governor. Portuguese traders were placed under their own jurisdiction, bypassing African law. They could access the Mwene Mutapa without the traditional respectful ceremonies. The Muslim traders, rivals to the Portuguese, were to be expelled. The kingdom was now a protectorate, and Mavura was a king in name only. As a king made by the grace of Portugal, Mavura never won the hearts of his people. He was a puppet, and everyone knew it. He could only hold his throne with Portuguese bayonets at his back, and soon the rightful king struck back. A year later, Capararidze stormed back, reconquering his country. He destroyed the missions and, in a final act of vengeance, killed Father Luis with his own hands. But the Portuguese were not done with their puppet. The Portuguese launched a devastating counter-offensive. The battle was so bloody, it claimed an estimated 12,000 lives on Capararidze's side, and so many Portuguese that they had to call in reinforcements from their colony in Goa just to maintain their hold. Mavura was restored to his throne. The kingdoms of Manica and Kitev were also reduced to Portuguese satellites. The Mutapa Empire was now a hollow shell. And from his gilded cage, King Mavura began to see the monster he had helped create. He complained that Portuguese traders, backed by slave soldiers, roamed his provinces like they owned them, disregarding all law and order. His own men revolted. Chaos reigned, and the slave trade expanded shamelessly. The Portuguese officials ignored all his complaints. They treated him with open disrespect. His people now hated him, holding him responsible for all the abuses carried out by his foreign masters. The Dominicans had made a catastrophic error. By making the Mwene Mutapa a Portuguese vassal, they believed they could convert the people by baptizing the king. But they were wrong. From that point on, baptism was no longer a sacrament of faith for the Mwene Mutapas. It was a rite of enthronement, a ceremony that marked them as vassals of a foreign power. Even when later rulers were installed in the traditional way, most chiefs saw them as traitors who had sold the country. In a tragic and bitter twist, the baptism that was meant to share the kingship of Christ instead utterly undermined the very foundation of the Mwene Mutapa's authority. The throne was forever poisoned. The king was no longer a divine ruler, but a puppet, his strings pulled from across the sea.